Many of them.
All right, there we go.
All right, so it's 7 o'clock on June 11th, 2024, and I will call the Town of Pownell Conservation Commission meeting to order. All right, let's do a roll call. If you could go around the room and say your name and present.
Okay, Nathan Fowle, present.
William Cottrell, present.
Kate Cooper, present.
Megan Randall present.
Margaret Cody present.
Okay.
We're all here now.
All right, so let's get started by approving the minutes from our May 14th, 2024 meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 We should probably say our names, right?
Oh, right,
Yeah.
Nathan Fowle, aye.
William Cottrell, aye.
Kate Cooper, aye.
Megan Randall, aye.
Margaret Cody, aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion is approved. All right, reports and updates. I believe we still have not filled the 7th Conservation Commission seat. I did see that the notice has gone out in various locations. So we should all kind of keep our eyes and ears open for people we think might be a good
Well,
addition.
I've had 3 people call me or.
That's great. That's
Dave Lowe was thinking about it. I say people's names out loud, probably not.
I'm not.
Anyway.
But
But
that's
they
wonderful.
haven't followed through by sending anything to Tara, as far as I know.
I have someone in my mind as well. So why don't we all just poke our people? Can you put that as an
People.
action item? Okay.
No problem.
Thank you, Nate.
People to be poked.
Be right back.
Okay. All right, the next item is the upcoming visitors to the Pownell Conservation Commission meetings. So we have on the schedule for our July meeting, Michael Fernandez of the Bennington County Conservation District has committed to coming. I am also going to recommend that I think after our conversation today, we may want to invite Darcy Pruden, who's the wastewater treatment facility operator. We have an agenda item where I think we want to talk about some issues at the wastewater treatment facility. And I was thinking that for August, I had in my mind that we might want to invite the person from MCLA that you've connected with, if that's appropriate, as a maybe. I thought about maybe asking Ruth Spots out because she has in her mind the history of the Conservation Commission. Does anyone else have thoughts about people we should contact for August or September?
You spoke to someone from the Hoorah?
Yeah,
Did
I
they
mean,
want to come or?
that's definitely, we could definitely invite Hoorah to the August or September meeting. Yeah, I can reach out.
Well, they know a lot about the river, so that would.
They do, and I think that after our conversation today, we might have some more direction on
Yes.
that. So maybe could you put that on the actions? Thanks. Steve. Okay, the Bennington County Conservation District Stormwater Forum is not going to be, hi, welcome.
You grab some over there if you want to. Thanks for coming, man. We're there. Yeah.
The Bennington County Conservation District Stormwater Forum, which Jeannie's been working on with Michael Fernandez. It will not be on June 23rd, which was the latest proposed date. It will be in July. Has anyone contacted you about that, Jim? Okay, if not, that's to come. So that will be at a date in July, and we'll provide updates on that.
I'm no longer on the board,
Okay,
so
but you might be valuable.
that's why I have not been contacted, perhaps.
Okay.
After 22 years, I stepped off the board.
Okay. All right, and then I don't know that we have these folks here. Do we have any community outreach updates from the last month to share? Okay, if not, we can, it's just been a standing item.
Just conversation.
Okay,
Trying to get, as we talked about.
Yeah.
people to
yeah.
commit to the meeting for the task.
And on the other, I'll say that just as a reminder to everyone here and anyone listening that we have a hike planned at the new town forest easement. We'll be meeting at the Hoosick Bend parking lot. That's at the corner of Dean Road and 346. And we'll carpool up to the entrance. The hike is from 3:30 to about 5:30. We're gonna hike up to the waterfall and just check it out as a group. Jennifer Boucher will be joining us.
What What's the date on that?
It's Saturday from
Okay.
2:30 to 5:30. And the public is welcome. Anyone who would like to join is welcome to come along. All right, under new business, we have two visitors tonight. We have Jim Henderson from the Bennington County Regional Commission. We have Donald Campbell from the Vermont Land Trust. So I'd love to kick off a conversation right now about areas of expertise relevant to our work. And I'd like to invite Jim Henderson to talk a little bit about issues related to the river in Pownell, some of the work you've been doing, some priorities for us. Would you like to start off? How would you like to start this? Do you want to talk about some of the issues
I think an introduction first. So I work for the Bennington County Regional Commission. I've been there since 1989. Started off as the GIS manager and kind of evolved out of that into more on the field, in the field, real work. And it's what I thrive to do as a planner. And it's rare when a planner can drive around and say, I got that done. That was my intent. Kind of got burnt out on just doing mapping. But I've done a lot of mapping in Pownell. And some, you've seen some of it. I GPSed all the trails on the town forest shortly after the town acquired the property. I was crossing paths with Bruce Richardson quite a bit, who was the forester who the town hired to do an inventory, and I think he developed a forest management plan. It's probably somewhat dated now. It might even be out of date. I don't know. But what I'm mostly involved with these days, my title now is the environmental program manager. So I have an annual contract with Vermont DEC to work on basin planning. And as you might know, we're in Basin 1, which includes the Hoosic, the Willemsack, and the Battenkill. Basically, all the rivers in Vermont that flow to the Hudson from, south of, in Bennington County predominantly. There's two other basins that I work with, and it's South Deerfield, a small bit in Pownell, Sunderland, Glastonbury, and Stanford. And then the Otter Creek, which is part of the South Champlain. So they have a basin plan that is updated every 5 years, and I'm contracted to help coordinate, particularly do a lot of the public outreach and arrange for meetings to occur when they're taking public comment on the plans. I also manage our brownfields program. I've had several projects in Pownell. And a brownfield is generally described as a piece of property that is underutilized or straight out vacant because of a perception of there being environmental contamination. And my grants can pay for the assessment, the environmental assessments of the property. And once we get the data that confirms that there are certain types of contamination issues that need to be remediated, we develop, this is all through contracts that I have with qualified environmental professionals. We develop a corrective action plan. And that is the key to getting a piece of property from one owner, who quite often is the liable property, to a next owner who wants to do a redevelopment of that property. And the standout in Pownell for me is the Tannery Dam.
Yeah.
And I worked with Bill Scully and Dennis Candelera, who was at one time on the select board in Pownell, and through a brownfield grant, we did the assessments of the soils, the sediment behind the dam, and removed them. And then Bill and Dennis retrofitted that dam with the state-of-the-art German-built turbines and operate it from your cell phone. And I also did some work with Mac Molding on their property on 346 until PFOA was discovered, and they were like, whoa. What I would love to do someday is recruit that property right there on Center Street where it's vacant, but that was also a building that Warren Cable owned, and most likely we'll probably find some PFOA there if it hasn't been already. But that's a classic example of a vacant site that is probably not going to be reused until somebody has the money to come along and do that very expensive work. So, and that's the part of my job that gets me off the most, is working to get buildings and properties back into reuse. Especially if it has a housing component. And the two highlight properties that I'm working right now on is Ben High and the Bradford Mill, which was most recently called Lausanne Machine and Engineering. Large component of housing included in both of those. But I'm here predominantly to talk about rivers and streams, and a little bit of background on that is I lived in Arlington for about 15 years, and for school choice reasons, we moved to Sandgate. And so I'm still in the Battenkill watershed, but I became very compassionate about the Battenkill and what was going on in the early 90s with the Battenkill. There was a severe decrease in the trout population in that middle age cohort. And working with Vermont Fish and Wildlife, particularly a guy named Ken Cox, who was the fisheries biologist here, we pretty much determined what we thought was going on was lack of habitat, because people at the same time the fish population was doing this, the increase in tubing, canoeing, rafting, kayaks was going off the charts. And it was very common for the canoe liveries to float down the river and remove the wood from the river to make it safe for passage. What really got us going, though, was a petition by local residents to start to stock the river in response to the trout crash. And this is a river that has not been stocked since the 40s, and it is a viable native trout stream. And a group of us, we formed what we now call the Battenkill Watershed Alliance. At the time, we were called the Friends of the Battenkill, and we teamed up with Orvis to petition against this petition and to keep the Battenkill wild. And we successfully won. We convinced the Water Resources Board that that was not a good idea. We really need to address the reason why the trout population is crashing. So through years of studies, we determined that it is a lack of habitat. We then became the Battenkill Watershed Alliance, and our main goal was to work on in-stream habitat. And that included literally excavators in the river, moving big rocks, forming structures. We worked with the Green Mountain National Forest, a biologist there by the name of Scott Wixom, and he would be capable of working with you because Green Mountain National Forest, you're within the proclamation boundary, so to speak. He did a lot of the design work, and we had a highly skilled contractor who uses an excavator like it's part of his hand.
So with all of this river expertise that you brought to the Battenkill, and I mean, you've done like incredible work there. I wonder if you could speak to like the needs that we have at the Hoosick River now, because I know that there's a put-in that a lot of folks don't know about. And, you know, I think that we had a great conversation about what's going on down near the wastewater treatment facility. I think we should briefly touch on that and invite Darcy next week. But, you know, there are also questions about as we think about the town plan, like the recreational possibilities here, I'm not sure we have a comprehensive picture of the health of the river and the opportunities that are there.
I'll transition into that right away. I did bring some handouts of, the Batten Hill Watershed Alliance has made a specific transition away from in-stream habitat, and that was for a couple of reasons. The state of Vermont has totally changed their tune and look at in-stream habitat. And a lot of what we were doing using big boulders and trees to stabilize banks and to build structure, they tend to start frowning on. So we're now doing a lot more public outreach. I brought our brochure that I put in mailboxes, especially when we know that a new property has changed hands. And it talks specifically about riparian restoration, floodplain restoration, buffer plantings. And we also have these posters that we developed with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. I brought a couple for you to have. We put these on kiosks that are someplace where people enter the rivers. A couple of them are laminated, and then I brought one that's just, if you wanted to, make copies of this. Courtney, our new Fish and Wildlife biologist, she developed this one. And so you can look at these.
Jim, to your knowledge, has anyone done anything like this for the Hoosic? This is really.
No, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The Fora has been in existence for about 15 years, perhaps a little bit longer. I was involved in the beginning of that, and I would love them to do this, emulate what the Batten Hill Watershed Alliance has done. I'm on the board of Southwest Vermont Trout Unlimited, and I joined them again specifically to put their feet to the fire and say, you guys love to fish, you love this river, you talk to talk, walk to walk and get your hands dirty. And I put them on the spot and they all agreed, yes, you're right, we have not done anything compared to what you guys have done. So I can send you a digital version of that brochure. And I tell every river group that I can make contact with, copy it word for word, take out the Batten Kill, put your name in there, change the pictures, new contacts on the back. I would love it if every river had a group that would start spreading the word like that does. So horror, absolutely. The similar thing, the message was heard by Trout Unlimited from me, where I said, there's this other river called the Walloomsac that is starting to get hammered by fishermen because it's now well known. Let's do the same thing. So I helped them develop, and they got they submitted a grant, and they are now initiating a similar program that we have on the Batten Kill. But they're going a little step further where they're doing water quality monitoring. We have not specifically done that, but Trout Unlimited has started that as well. So the Walloomsac is getting ready to do this exact same thing. Public outreach, identify project areas, do an inventory, look for spots where there's no vegetation down to the river and the riverbanks are eroding and literally falling in to the river, creating both a lot of sedimentation and flood hazard issues. So I think I'll transfer away from, the river groups and looking for projects and developing projects. But I will add to this. I've been pretty successful at raising money to specifically buy trees and shrubs to plant along the river. For a while, my hands were tied because my grants were coming from the Green Mountain National Forest, and they were specific that our trees had to go in the Batten Kill watershed. Those strings are now cut. And I planted trees on the landslide at Dean Road. I planted several spots on the Hoosic. And I would be happy, willing, and help you to get a group of people together to do very specific projects like that. Kate and I were at the landslide at the end of, I can't remember the name of the road, but it's, near Dean Road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where the big landslide is.
Snake Hill.
Snake Hill.
Yeah.
Yes.
What,
And I remember that before that landslide, I was able to drive, I used to have a small four-wheel drive pickup truck, a Toyota. I was driving up there. And so I remember when it was a logging road until that landslide happened. And I think it was during Irene that it really started, and then it just, that would be a great project right there to start.
Brian Harris would be into that.
Pardon?
Brian Harris would be into that because he lives over there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be an
And
honor.
I do think it would be really good to have Horror come and talk to you
Yeah.
and try to convince them to get a little bit more involved with
Well,
because it seems to me, it's my impression anyways, that they're focused a lot more in Massachusetts.
yeah, because, but it's the personality of the towns, there's a lot of college professors and so on over in Williamstown who are eager to join this kind of thing.
And some of
So
the
we're
founding
trying to
members
find-
were from Massachusetts, like Lawrence Stevens,
Yeah,
who was the real founder of the group. He lived in Williamstown, and so for good reason, I think they were focused. There is another project that I was very much involved with, and it's in Pownell. But the property is owned by the town of North Adams, and I think you know about this old dam and the chutes and.
Oh, the chutes, yeah.
Where is that at?
It's in North Adams, down by Masmoka.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, this property that I'm talking about is actually in Pownell, and I believe it's off of White Oaks Road.
Oh, that part, yeah.
The property is owned by the city of North Adams, and I wrote a grant several years ago to do a study to remove those dams and the dam works, because there's multiple big concrete structures. And we were working with the state of Massachusetts on that. The Green Mountain National Forest was very interested in this parcel. However, there was an unfriendly neighbor who claims ownership of some of this, and the state didn't want to get involved in that sort of a controversy. So we did not actually get the grant, but we have a really good grant application, and I worked with Roy Shift on that, who was the author of that phase 2 geomorphic study, which has a lot of good information in it. That goes back to, I think, 2017 or,
This is 2009.
pardon me?
This is 2009.
Oh, 2009.
Yeah,
How
it is.
time flies.
Jim, I have right now a few follow-up items from what you've already talked about. One is these brochures, which are awesome, but I think that maybe we need to connect with Hoorah in order to fill this out. Another piece is that maybe we can continue the conversation about buying trees and shrubs. And, I was looking at this map here. This is the, I don't know if you can see it. This is the fluvial erosion hazard map, which is going to be updated in what, 3 years, did you say? These maps,
No, that,
FEMA is updated.
there's two different types of
The FEMA maps are
flood
getting
related. There's
updated.
actually, you're looking at what is called fluvial erosion hazard, and that was derived from very scientific, like field observations.
Oh, you were talking.
And with geologists and hydrogeologists. And I was doing a lot of the GIS work on that. We hired consultants to develop that document. So that is before what the state is now calling river corridors. And what a river corridor is very similar. It's basically showing this is where there's high hazard, where rivers will erode and will want to move. And the idea of a river corridor is to not build things where we know the river will naturally want to move, because rivers are always moving back and forth. They have since rivers were born. And so one of the byproducts of our geomorphology study, and geomorphology is basically the study of a river and how it interacts with both the landscape, which is natural or man-made. So in many cases where the fluvial erosion hazard zone is nice and smooth, it's because that is the railroad track and it acts as a natural berm. So the river's not going to go through there. What the state did, they built off of this idea and they created what a statewide database called river corridors. And it's all basically, they take the center line of a river and they create a buffer back from the center line that is determined on the size of the contributing watershed. So a river like the Hoosic will have a much wider corridor, but you have to understand it's a nice smooth line because it's a buffer from the center line. Then the smaller streams, they get because the watersheds are smaller, the river corridor gets a little bit narrower. That has been made for the entire state of Vermont and the entire part of Pownell, whereas that is very specific, scientifically derived,
Field.
and all we did was the Hoosic River.
So Jan, the thing that I wanted to point out to everyone here is that this is mainly extreme, very high and high flood risk, according to that field data. And the question that I wanted to bring to you as we talk about next steps is these are different, I think, reaches of the river and segments, different segments of the reach, right? If I'm reading this.
Yeah, I think we
And-
broke the river into 6 or 7 reaches.
Yeah, and so the question is, if we're thinking about looking into the next 6 months, year, looking for money to provide more trees and shrubs to improve flood management, especially where the river's constrained, where that risk is higher, or where there's infrastructure, is the high priority spot for that this mass failure? Is it somewhere else on this high risk? Like these are all high risk zones. The red ones are obviously super high risk. I think that this is a lot of agriculture here, but like where should we be focusing our recommendations and time and effort, given that this is a high flood risk?
Well, I think first step would be to convince the town to adopt river corridor bylaw, which, because right now, after we created this report, I went to the select board and said, here's our results, and here's a model river fluvial erosion hazard zone bylaw, which would prohibit certain development within those corridors. And I was given a flat out, no way, no way. And a large part of it was because the attitude was, it's all agricultural land, it's gonna flood. What difference does it make if it floods? And my response is, the reason why it's rated extreme and very high is because it is agricultural land. It has been cut. There's very little, if any, buffer along the stream. It's highly prone to eroding because of its land use. And so that went over like a lead zeppelin. They had no interest at all.
So maybe we pick.
So that could come back up again. And it will be coming back up again because FEMA is updating a different type of regulation, and that is what we call the special flood hazard. Now, that's not where the river is going to erode, it's where it's going to flood and get everything wet. And that's the significant difference between those two mapped zones. The river corridors is where the river is going to move and cause extreme erosion, and generally it's very close to the river. As you know, the flood zone can go out very far away from the river, especially along agricultural lands. That is where things will get wet. So FEMA is in the process of revising their maps right now. And to prepare for the new maps to come out, they are also updating what they consider to be the standard for a flood hazard regulation. And the maps are, I believe, are due to come out in around 2027, 28. And my office is working with Department of Environmental Conservation to help the towns update those regulations to get them already in place when the new flood maps come out. At the same time, we're trying to convince towns to also adopt the river corridor.
So we could help to make a recommendation to them.
Yes, and that is an optional thing for the towns to do. However, if you want your town to stay in the National Flood Insurance Program, you don't have a choice. FEMA is telling you, you must adopt this new up to par, what we consider the most up-to-date regulation with these maps. So there's really little choice there.
Can I ask a quick question about that? So is the right kind of scale of adoption at the town level, or is it at the county level, or given FEMA's requirements in order to maintain flood insurance, is it at a larger scale? And whatever the right scale is, it sounds like it's town. Have others in Vermont adopted these bylaws? Do we have a list of the towns that have done so?
Yes, well, first question is, this is adopted on a municipal level. It would become part of your zoning bylaw. And right now, most of the towns just have it as a chapter in your zoning bylaw. So if you're gonna do development along a river, you have to, okay, where is that? The state of Vermont is recommending that towns take it out of the center of the bylaw and put it in as a separate part of the land use regulations as an appendix, so that it is, a standalone document and it's easy to find. That's what we're recommending with all the towns. The river corridor, as I said, is not required. However, there is this thing called ERAF, the emergency, I can't remember what ERAF stands for, but basically, when a disaster strikes, there is automatic, the state of Vermont will give the town a certain percentage of what the overall damage is. And it starts at 7.5%. But if you adopt certain aspects of flood resiliency, then your percentage will go up, that the state of Vermont will give to you in response to a disaster. And that would be adopting a river corridor, adopting the flood hazard zone, adopting bridge and road standards. So there are certain things that the town can do which would elevate what you're eligible to receive from a national disaster.
That's
Some history. So do you have a sense of why the select board has been reluctant to adopt this? And, you said it's all agricultural land. What difference? Was there like when Irene was the most recent big event and really not that much happened here from Irene? Am I correct?
Oh,
But
maybe
it's
just-
not really happened then, right?
But that was it. There wasn't a lot of damage to people's homes or,
Not as much here as there were in other.
is that, do you think, part of why
No, it was just the politics at the time and the attitude of the select board.
How long ago was that?
That was in like 2010, maybe.
Okay.
so do you think never mind.
Well, I mean, this is a good thread to pick up. I want to keep an eye on time because I want to make sure that Donald has time to present on the town forest. But this is really important information. So I think we should stay in touch about it. I want to,
Before I stop, though, I do want to give you a website that you should all check out. It's called Flood Ready Vermont. And that will talk about, specifically everything that I've talked about. And it will also talk about the ERAF program and tell you if you adopt this, this, and this, how the percentage of state assistance will increase. So Flood Ready Vermont,
Okay.
very accessible, a lot of good information there.
And I'm guessing we may have follow-up questions, but this is a really great start. The other thing I wanted to touch on is I'd like to invite Darcy Pruden to come and share her feelings about and observations about the management of the wastewater treatment facility lands, the former tannery lands, former Superfund site, which is subject to restrictions from ANR and EPA. They basically have site control there. And the EPA, the language of the agreement with ANR restricts the use of that land in very specific ways. And Darcy's concerned that some of the management of the land currently may be having an effect on erosion of the berm, which protects the contaminated land that's on the other side of the berm. And Jim, I know we went down to see this. And I think that you felt that a phone call might be in order just to make sure that, the town is compliant. I'm not sure if this is the purview of the town or the BCRC. I mean, I think if it's something town related, we would have to have a motion to recommend some action.
I think it's.
But I just want to make sure we're
purview of the
responding
State of
to the
Vermont,
concerns.
working with EPA.
Yeah.
It's beyond BCRC. However, I did reach out to one of my contacts in the Brownfield program of EPA, and that's very different than Superfund. And I told him about, our walk the other day, and he did tell me that there was a site visit earlier this year, and that he would recommend that the state of Vermont get involved, and specifically like how some of this land is being used and whether or not it might actually be in conflict to.
Okay.
Are you talking about the trail that?
Yeah, there's a trail that is right along the top of the berm.
So I think what we should do, that's really helpful. I think what we should do is take that information, invite Darcy, let her share her concerns. And then maybe we can recommend a response at that point. And I might catch up with you about
And
it.
how about if I forward you the email that I got as a response from my conversation?
And I'll share that with everybody here. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Jim. That's great. I do see it's 7:40 and this is all, I mean, we could talk for hours about this. This is like absolutely critical.
Yeah, I'm sorry I went on and on.
No, that's
It's
okay.
great, Jim. It's what we need to be learning. We might invite you back.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that we also have time to hear from Donald tonight, because this is all going to inform our next steps. So we've got river pieces that I think we need to follow up on. And we also have a lot of work to do at the town forest. And we had a VORAC kind of kickoff meeting today. And I'd love for Donald to speak to Vermont Land Trust involvement and some of your thoughts about how the Concom can help this management plan that we all need to work on together take shape.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thank you for inviting me. And before I do, I just want to say Jim's been doing this work for a long time and he's done so much good work, especially in Bennington County. He's a fisherman, he's a hunter, he's out there, he does the stuff, and he's very passionate about it, and it really shows in your work, Jim. It's such a pleasure to work with you.
thank you for your service.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
I am particularly bullish about this thing, which we
great.
call the suite of options, because it allows landowners to put themselves where they want to be in protecting the river. They might not want to be at the far extreme conserving their land, but they might just want to be doing something in their yard. And this brochure allows people to do anything that they feel comfortable with to kind of make the stream a little bit better. So it's a difficult brochure to maintain because the contacts on the back go out of date, but it really is the closest thing to a one-stop brochure. And I hand it out a lot. So this would be a good project for a Conservation Commission to take on because it's a piece that is really useful for people. So Jim, thanks for all the effort you've put into creating this and then maintaining it over the years, because I know it gets stale after a few years. So,
Shelley Stiles, was a big part of that as well.
yeah, she was, yeah. So I'm happy to talk to you about the town forest. It's been in the newspaper a little bit, so I don't know how much you all know about it, but I brought maps because everybody likes maps. I don't know if you want one, but I've got some extra here. And this first map, which I'm passing around, shows that you actually have two town forests, which really are effectively treated as one now. And forgive me if I'm repeating stuff that you already know, but in 2002, a little over 700 acres was conserved. That was called the Pownell Tannery Lands. And it was a very, very choppy piece of land that is outlined in pink on this map. It had extremely limited access at the time even, and then the very best access to it washed away in Hurricane Irene, as Jim mentioned. So we've been struggling for years on how could Pownell access their own town forest. And then an opportunity came around to buy in 2023, roughly 300 acres of land that was owned, privately owned, and was really right in the middle of the town forest. So this kind of donut hole in the middle of a ragged donut hole for sure, in the middle of the town forest. And really the select board got out in front of it. They were very bullish on making it happen, and they didn't take no for an answer. And they were successful in getting state funding, and we rustled up a little bit of private funding too, to make it possible for the town to acquire that. So the town of Pownell now owns a town forest that's in excess of 1,000 acres, which is really unusual. There are some towns that have town forests that big, but not very many. So it's this incredible asset, right? Close to your population, and it also happens to butt up against 5,000 or 6,000 acres of conserved land that run along the Taconic Crest Ridge. So between the 1,000 acres that Pownell owns that's conserved, and between the other 5,000 or 6,000 acres along the Taconic Crest Trail and Ridge, there's really a very, very significant portion of the Taconic Mountains that are conserved by this three-state focused effort. The second map I have for you is a map that shows just what we did in 23. And this is an actual copy of our conservation easement map, and it drills down a little bit more onto the, I'm sorry for anyone who may be watching this recorded, but yeah, sorry about this, Margaret. You couldn't see it from that distance anyway, but this shows the almost 300 acres of land that was recently conserved. And it's very, very difficult even to see it if you're holding it in your hand, but on the right-hand side, you can see a dotted line that goes from those, roughly those solar panels that make a little bit of a U in the upper right-hand corner. And that black dotted line goes down and then cuts off to the left and eventually connects to the yellow outline. So I don't know if you can see it here. It goes from here down to here and over there.
I wasn't seeing that line.
So as part of this acquisition, Pownell got not only a deeded access route, which would be suitable for a future foot trail, but also in the works has been a purchase of some 6 or 7 acres of land that run on that, roughly that same route, that will allow Pownell to have fee ownership, the actual ownership of the road going to this 1,000 acres. And the plan right now is to extend Dean Road down to the point where there will be a parking lot, and then have a woods road that goes up from Dean Road to the town forest. And there'll be a gate and a kiosk and whatnot there. And one of the things that many towns struggle with when they do these kind of projects is that they don't have any money for them. But in your case, you are lucky enough to have a town staff that really got out there, and your recreation group and your other town staff got out there and hustled and got a 300 and something $1,000 VOREC grant, Vermont Outdoor Recreation grant, to be able to develop this access, both purchase the land and build the road and build the parking lot and put the kiosk in and make it accessible to people. So finally, after 20 years or so, Pownell will own a really good access to its town forest. So that's kind of what's exciting, that the town government is in the final stages of acquiring that land and hopes to be starting building that route, I think this summer, if I understand right. Yeah. So things take time, but once that's established, it will open up a whole network of trails and streams and ecological areas. One of the things that this third map I'm going to hand around, one of the things that's really interesting about this property is that it's ecologically very significant. This is a property that the state heritage, non-game and heritage folks have done a lot of work with evaluating the communities, the natural communities that are up there. And a couple of them, all the ones that you see in blue, ones that are significant for some reason. And generally it's because they're oak. And there's just not a lot of oak forest in Vermont. So this is a fairly rare site for Vermont. The larger outline is the dry oak forest, and the smaller pieces that you can see on this map are dry oak, hickory, hop, hornbeam forest, which are really interesting and kind of fun natural community that have these old wizened oaks that are all stunty, and there's a little bit of sedge on the ground, and they're very open and have a very, very particular feel.
Kind of feels like Savannah.
Yeah, kind of like Savannah a little bit, except way up a hill, usually very, very dry site. Not worth logging, not worth cutting firewood, but really a very interesting ecological type. And those are, going back to the orthographic map that I showed you, those are protected by a ecological protection zone to the extent that we were able to delineate those during the conservation process. We did. Unfortunately, we were doing it at a time of year when it's not easy to do, so it's not perfect, but unless there's activities planned up there, the exact edge of that may not be quite so critical, but that gives you a pretty good idea of where things are. So between these maps, you can see that Pownell owns a really wonderful place. It's steep, not going to lie to you. I did hike from the gravel pit up to the Taconic Crest Trail one day. And the last part of it, I think I might have been on hands and knees. Just it's really steep.
Some of it's like a goat trail.
Yeah, and it's delicate up there too. So the idea of building trails would have to come with a lot of careful design and a lot of forethought. And that's not easy to do unless you have some money for it, which you do. So your community will have some ability to design some nice switchbacks and some, be sensitive to the runoff and the erosion and some of the other pitfalls that come from trails that are not well constructed. So it's a really exciting opportunity, and there is going to be a lot happening in the next few years. One of the things that needs to happen is that there are some management plans that need to be developed, and we had a conversation a little bit about that today. I had a conversation with the chair of your select board afterwards a little bit. And it seems like there might be a conversation to be had with what role this commission could have in helping out with some of that management plan writing. So I think that's a conversation between the Conservation Commission probably and the select board about how they could be helpful, how they could be in service to the select board. But there's plenty of work to be done. There's a recreational trails map that needs to be created. There's an inventory that needs to be done. There's a management plan for the Vermont Housing Conservation Board and VLT that needs to be created. And there's the possibility of doing a forest management plan. So many of these different plans could be done separately, or if the Conservation Commission wanted to be something of maybe a convener, it might be possible for you to bring some of these other groups together and be a convener that would help create one plan instead of four. And that one plan might be something that could be a little bit more useful because you wouldn't always be wondering which plan you were referencing. You could be looking at the central plan, so to speak. But that is a requirement of the funding, so that has to be done in the next year and a half or so. There's a Williams College class, environmental studies class, that will be spending some time here this fall doing, working with the community and trying to figure out what some community priorities might be. And that's something that the select board has recently approved of. So Sarah Gardner and her advanced environmental studies class will be here doing some work with the community to try to figure out what people would like to see happen. And from that, some of these management plans will be derived. So I think probably in 5 years, you will have a really wonderful town forest with an amazing access and a parking area and signage and marked trails and maybe some places to camp, or maybe not, or maybe some places to fish, or maybe not. Whatever you kind of come up with, but I think it will be an amazing asset. And this next few years will be kind of a time of transition while it transitions from what it has been for many, many years, which is raw land that nobody could get to, or almost nobody could get to becoming something that would be a public asset that's open to everybody. So that's my elevator speech. It's probably a couple trips up and down the elevator, but that's the summary of this project. And I guess if you have any questions, I'd be glad to field them.
Well, I have a question for both of you, because when you say open for everybody, that brings, just as putting in trails brings issues and problems. And you were saying that the Battenkill was getting open for everybody, and kind of, there were issues with the trout declining. So
That's a really great question. I'm going to jump
How do we
on you,
move
Jim,
that?
before you get ahead of steam on that, because I know you have a lot to say, but the conservation easement, which protects these 1,000 acres, specifically anticipates that. And through the process of this management plan that will be created, it allows the town the latitude to do things like protect the property from overuse, or charge for the property for certain events. You know, if you want to do specific events that the town wants to charge for. It also allows the town to have hunting on the property. It allows the town to not have hunting on the property. So the town has a lot of decisions that they have to make. And one of the things it does more or less prevent is motorized use. So there are some small exemptions for handicap and whatnot, but for the most part, motorized use are not anticipated in most, if not all, town forests around the state. So
When I did the trail map, it was a mess, from ATVs, motorcycles. It was getting very trashed, except on certain areas where it was very steep, especially on the northern end, where there's a trail that goes up the ridge. I mean, it was literally this wide and this steep, and low bush blueberries growing. It was like a goat trail. But the vast majority of the trails were big mud puddles. And there were actually some wrecked vehicles up there.
Oh, geez.
That were just left abandoned. I don't know if that's what's happened to any of that. And frankly, I'm wondering, I'm certain that the trail map that I created would still be relevant. And that will get you that and have that as part of the update of become part of the management plan.
well, it might be a glass half full and glass half empty thing, Jim. I'm not sure, but it strikes me it's in pretty good shape now. You know, having just been on the property, that the log roads have been well maintained. The water bars have been pretty well maintained. There are a couple of areas of erosion from mechanized vehicles. You know, over time, that can be worked on. It's not, but I wouldn't call it a mess right now. So I think maybe it has, maybe things have improved a little bit, but
Well, it's been 22 years.
yeah, I would encourage the town to look at this as a long project. You know, this is something that is not something you work on all in one year. This is something you work on over the course of many
It
years.
needs to be part of our pride as a town. I mean, I sort of took it for granted that there were all these green hills all around and I never really thought about it.
If you walk out of this building and you stand on the corner of that building and you look that way,
It's amazing.
you are looking at your town forest.
Yeah,
That whole range of the mountains that you see so clearly when you're driving down by the Pownell View Barn and whatnot, that is this project. You
yeah.
know, you own that. The town now owns that. Halifax Hollow is, if you look that way, you can very prominently see the hollow that comes down where the Halifax Hollow stream is.
Sometimes if people have a sense of ownership, they are a little more respectful.
Well, I think that's a really important point, and I'm looking at our remit, and I know we've been, we're new, like this is a new commission. Does anyone here in this room remember when the last time the Conservation Commission convened? Was it 10 years ago? Was it more than 10 years ago?
More than 10.
I think it was
because
at least a decade. So, you know, as we go through this is a huge project, and is there a deadline for this management plan?
Well, there is, yes. In about a year and a half, a management plan has to be produced for the Vermont Housing Conservation Board as a grant condition. And the Vermont Land Trust also requires that because right now there's an interim management plan, which you've read probably, maybe some of you have read it, but the
Yeah.
interim management plan basically says what needs to happen for the property right now. And it pretty much keeps things as they are until such time as the town adopts a new management plan that would allow for more activity. So trails,
I get with Sarah, you know, and then she would, in her class, to be able to help provide some of that information and
Yeah.
guidance for because I'm not sure if we've decided on conservation, really taking ownership of that yet, so.
Well, I think that's a good question. You know, we talked a little bit about this with the initial just VORIC meeting, you know, like how, this is a huge undertaking. I mean, even a year feels like, wow, that's like a tight timeline for this level of work between multiple parties coordinating. You know, I'm wondering if we look at item number 5 on our remit, you know, preparing, collecting, publishing, advertising, distributing relevant books, maps, and other documents. I wonder if we have a role to play in being a central location where all these different pieces could come together. I think that's a conversation we need to have with the select board, but you know, that I think is a follow-up item is like, what is our role? Because if this is happening, I do feel like between the things we talked about with Jim tonight and the things that Donald shared with us, that's more than enough work for a year. And, you know, we need to really, I think, target our energy and focus on these core activities. And so I think, you know.
if I may, I think you might have there might be a role for you that could be in service to the select board, which would not involve you doing all the work. I'm not sure this is a committee that would be best positioned to do all the work. You have a very competent recreation committee already. You know, you have very competent town staff. There are a lot of ecologists out there that can do work. There's a number of foresters that could do forest management plans. So what you could offer to the select board would be clearinghouse, not clearinghouse, but a sort of central point of bringing in these pieces of information in an orderly way so that they stack up and give a good inventory, a good picture of all the different management options that are available. And I was reading over your remit, and number 4 seems, you know, administer the land, properties and other rights which have been acquired by the municipality for the purpose of this chapter. It feels like you don't want to administer them yourselves, but perhaps the role you could play would be to, offer, if the select board would like, to pull some information together from various quarters and obviously it would be the select board's position to adopt it or not. In the end, it wouldn't be something that you folks would decide, but you could do some of the legwork and some of the thinking and some of the bringing together of things without actually having to draft the whole bloody thing yourselves. So I don't know if you think that would be helpful, but Michael felt like it might be worth a conversation anyway, so.
I think the select board needs somebody to focus on.
Well, I
A
mean,
place to start would be to have somebody gather past documents, things that have already happened.
Yeah,
Because when I was working on the trails, that's when the recreation committee first assembled and became a real entity. And they developed a recreation plan for this. Meanwhile, Bruce Richardson, who is I don't know if he's still around, but he was the private forester that they hired to do the forestry plan. I don't know if that was ever adopted. Was it ever enrolled in the use value program? Or were these documents that just were created and then are sitting on a shelf? So there is already a body of information that somebody could make their mission to find it and then get it to the people that could then update it. And
yeah.
we don't have to
We've
reinvent
already
the wheel.
started. I'm hearing two things here. One is that we talked briefly about this. We've already, I think you've shared with Tara the Google Drive.
Mhm.
But I think we need to have something that everybody working on this can put information into and access. And I think we've already sort of started that with the inventory, but I'm hearing that maybe we need to be more specific right now in our focus on this inventory
Yes,
for this, the river and then the town forest. Do we need a motion? I'm wondering to have Bill have a discussion about this. Is this a motion worthy? Concom decision to propose that we take on a convening role. Not to do the whole plan, but to collect the information and sort of be that clearinghouse. And I think it's a Concom question that whether we should have a motion to have that discussion with the select board. So I will propose that. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the Concom contact the select board. Converse.
On the select board, sorry. Is that procedurally correct for him to make? a
No,
motion?
I think that it should be someone else, but
So
I
moved.
think so. Do I have a second?
I'll second, yeah.
Okay, and so the motion carries. Who should we have be the emissary? I guess.
Do we need to maybe put more shape to what we would be proposing exactly? Like, do we want to gather up the grant and land trust requirements and timetables to kind of clearly outline who we think is stacked against each piece? And then maybe kind of put some verbiage around exactly how we would define our role? Or would you rather just kind of open up a broader conversation?
I think that's a really good question, Margaret, and my instinct would be to say like, yes, absolutely, but I feel that based on and Donald, maybe you can fill in your thoughts here, but our work conversation today was so amoeba-like, like it's just the beginning stage and everyone's trying to figure out their role, and I think that you're right, that we need something specific, but I also think that it needs to be very simple at this stage, because I don't know that we know the delineations and the divisions of the labor at this point in a totally granular sense. But I do think that there needs to be a centralized place where this information comes into and goes out of. And Donald, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are to start somewhat informally. I appreciate the motion because it wouldn't be good if this whole group didn't feel it was worthwhile. But Margaret, I think your point is good, but I would add, there is some real talent in Pownell's town staff, and Tara Parks is particularly well versed in this stuff. She was very very much a part, in fact, did a lot of the drafting on the interim management plan that was created. And so she has her finger both on the pulse of the FOREC grant and the requirements of the VHCB grant. And she's also pretty tied into the select board. So she actually would be a really helpful person to kind of connect with on this. But I think the bigger issue is this, would this be helpful to the select board? You know, would this be something that the Conservation Commission could do that would be in service to the select board? And if the select board feels uncomfortable with it, well, maybe there's some part of it that the select board would feel comfortable with. It feels to me after our conversation this afternoon that maybe there's just the Conservation Commission is new and these requirements are, as you mentioned, Margaret, just kind of being understood. And there's a lot that's being worked out all at once. So my thought would be to see if the select board would like you to put a little bit of shape to it, not make all the decisions for them, but put a little shape to it and come back to them with well, here's what we're thinking about doing. We're getting a recreational report from the rec committee and we maybe get a forester to do a forest management plan, see if the state would look into these ecological questions we have and then put that to the select board, and the select board might say, well, we don't like any of that. Or they might say, well, that sounds good. Why don't you take the next step and then check back in with us? So I guess I would approach it somewhat informally on the record. I mean, in open session, but I wouldn't put them in a box where they feel like you're putting them on the spot yet with a yes or no question. I think the question is, how can we be helpful in this process?
Yeah.
Margaret, I didn't really answer your question, but I wandered around it. Is that?
What I saw today was that there just needs to be a place where information lives. And I think that's where I'm suggesting we start and then go from there.
Yes.
Well, I guess what I meant by talking about Tara is that a lot of information lives with Tara right now too.
Yeah.
So she has a lot of this information, all the BREC information and grant stuff, as well as all of the land trust stuff and
The recreation.
Yeah.
stuff. So, I mean, use her, I think should be a big asset to you.
I have one kind of tangentially related question. Do either of you see any danger in trying to get the existing map of logging roads sort of out to the public now so that folks can start exploring it? Or is there a concern that would bring too many people and too much damage if we haven't sort of already dealt with erosion issues and things like that?
My feeling on that would be, you're not quite ready.
Uh-huh.
And the reason is because you haven't established that safe access yet. So there is a place where the access will go, but it's on the edge of an active gravel pit. And that there are obviously safety and security issues with the gravel pit. And when it's all said and done, there's going to be a beautiful road that takes you right up a safe thing. There could even be split rail fences on the sides of it to keep people away from whatever, edges of the gravel pit or something like that. So there will be a much safer way to access it than there is right now. So it feels to me like you're in the information gathering phase, but I'm not sure you're quite ready to invite the world to use it yet. That would be my opinion. You think that's about where we are? Yeah.
Is the Sportsman's Club part of the parcel?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Sportsman's Club, it might be either just part of the old parcel or it might be part of the parcel that it's very hard to tell because of the way that point goes. So, but it is now surrounded by the town forest either way. I'm not sure if it's the 2002 easement or the 2023 easement, but it's right.
They did use it before, so I would think it would be part of the 2002. Because it was technically town owned before we took this, I think.
Yeah. I did some of the field work up there and I have to tell you, it's hard to tell where the boundaries are. There's a lot of them go down to a single point. And so it's a little difficult, but But none of that matters anymore because you own it all. So, no more worries about the points.
Is the club still active? Do they still use the cabin?
I guess so, during hunting season. The club uses it, so.
I'm just thinking of how to move forward on this. We do all need to have a process for working together. And so for now, anyway, I can be the liaison with the Sporek group. But we do need to figure out this process. And as part of the inventory, I think we should talk to Tara and gather those documents. Like that seems like a really clear next step. And maybe we could have a volunteer to kind of download all that information from Tara and share it out with the Concom. Can I have I could volunteer to do it, but if there's someone else who would like to.
I can check. Some of it might be already in our system.
Well, we have the interim management plan, but there may be other documents that we could bring together. But I do think we need to have that conversation with the select board about like what is our highest and best use and service of this project and as part of this team. So I'm happy to be that person.
So don't forget that the planning commission is starting work on the new town plan, and that includes zoning.
Yeah.
So
how does that all?
But I just, that's a question of, well, we can make a recommendation.
Well, the town plan is a great, should be a factor in this too. So you're hearing from the recreation committee, you're hearing there's input coming from the town plan side of things, it's another piece of pulling all this together. And frankly, the select board, it's a lot of work to pull all these different things together. And so I think the offer could be, can we carry some of the water for you on this? And can we just kind of pull some things together and begin to make sense of some of the stuff that the select board's going to have to develop a management plan somehow. And it's not going to be very good if, you have to do it yourselves. So it'd be great if you had some help with it.
What does it do?
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. Mike Gardner, last night, quickly, no, that won't work. I mean, there needs to be public process. There needs to be a lot of thought that goes into it. There needs to be this work that the Williams College student's going to do. There needs to be trail analysis of potential trails that your recreation committee's interested in scoping out. So there's a lot of work to do, but somebody has to pull it all together for the select board. And if it doesn't have to be the Conservation Commission, but this town is lucky to have one. Many communities in this area don't have conservation commissions. And so Pownell's lucky to have one. Everybody up north has them, and a lot of people on the eastern side of the state, conservation commissions everywhere. There just aren't that many around here. So it seems like something you could be doing that would help lighten the load of the select board.
Okay, well, let's kick off that conversation. That's on there as a follow-up item. Okay. Well, I'm seeing it's 8:15. Usually we're pretty good about wrapping up by 8, but we had, I feel like we didn't even cover everything,
No,
but
it's
just the start,
guys.
just the start.
So much to do.
I did want to quickly zoom through the discussion. I think that my understanding is that everyone here has started working on, were you here for public comment? I want to make sure you have an opportunity.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to, Nate has been talking about.
I've been twisting Steve's arm about
So-
maybe joining the commission.
Oh, great.
I'm involved in some things down in Massachusetts, but I'm a Pownell resident and this is sort of up the alley. I have to. I have to like figure out how I can budget my time and get involved. So, but it's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for coming.
I'll probably see you on
Come
Saturday.
back soon.
Nice.
All right, take care.
Bye. The inventory work, I'm going to propose that we not get into detail on that right now. The question that I do have for everybody here, actually for the two of you, is where do we put the information that we're gathering? So for example, Jim let me borrow this wonderful phase 2. This should go on our files because this is information we may need, for our own reference. Like where is the storage location.
Yeah, so I mean, with every sort of Gmail account, you get, a bunch of free storage on sort of a cloud-based Google Drive.
Yeah.
So that's really the only element of this email address that we've even used so far. And yes, certainly, I think, Tara could send out the login info for everyone. And it's just nice to work from that, because if we are collaboratively working on things, you can have two people working on the same spreadsheet at the same time, rather than having to kind of save new versions. So yeah, I don't see a reason why that wouldn't be a good kind of repository to start pulling this stuff together and putting it in folders.
So, can you put an action item that I'll just, or actually, could you have Tara send that to us?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that way we can start, like, the work that we've done. I don't want to steal anybody's like thunder tonight. If there's an urgent thing that you wanted to share, we should take the time to do that. But I also feel like we've covered a lot of like next steps, and that maybe we could push that to the next meeting, if that works for people. Okay.
If I can put my
Yeah.
fingers on digital versions of like.
That'd be great.
The geomorph,
That'd be great.
the trail data, all that, would you be my
Yes.
point person to send that to?
Totally, yeah, I'd be
Okay.
happy to do that. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Straight to Nate.
Yeah, you can send it directly to me too, yeah.
What number are you? I mean,
I think 4, let me check real quick and just make sure.
or you can send it to me.
Yeah, Concom4@townofpanel is my address, yeah.
But we'll create the file structure so that, this is going to be a public resource that everybody can then access
Mhm.
who has questions. And then, in terms of next steps, we had talked about a community value survey. That I think was something that Jeannie, if I'm not mistaken, was going to follow up on. We can talk about that next time. I do feel like I was going to propose, per conversation last time, that we set a date for a strategic planning meeting internally, that we just kind of focus on the Conservation Commission, what we're here for, how to best organize our efforts after several months of us getting to know the community, the needs, what's on the agenda. I don't know that we need to do anything about that tonight. I feel like what we heard tonight, to me, almost seems like we just did that. Like this management plan and some of these river pieces, like, will keep us busy for.
Town plan, inventory, and
Yeah, so unless anyone here has a comment on that, I'm gonna kind of say that we did a lot of that work tonight, and that we don't need to have a special meeting on that at this time. All right, does anyone else want to add anything to discussion before we move to public comment? Okay, is there anyone online who wants to comment? Okay.
Nope.
All right, so with that said, I want to truly thank our guests tonight, who bring like decades of experience.
What's she saying, Jim?
You're all you've done all these years. We will follow in your footsteps, hopefully.
We've been friends and did a lot of good work together over the decades, man. That's what it means.
Thank you
Sure.
so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all right. So we will adjourn this meeting at 8:18. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks.
Go.
Thanks all.